Welcome. We bid you welcome. John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, coming to you from my music corner of the world. And today, Year of the Priest. I don't even know what episode number this is. I haven't kept up with those numbers. But anyway, first, I got to introduce the panel. Of course, my faithful co-captain on these Wednesday journeys, John the Music Nut. How you doing, my friend?
As I destroy, last thing you'll hear me cry is victory. How are you guys?
Oh man, this is
Awesome.
great. And then I'm titling him the Encyclopedia Britannica of rock and roll. He is our professor in the Contrarians, as far as I'm concerned. Peter Jones, how you doing, my friend?
I'm awesome.
Great to have you back.
JC, John, nice to see you both again.
Yes.
Thoroughly enjoying the series. Love all the other episodes. Everybody's got such great insight and personal attachment and feelings about this great catalog. And we're just keeping it rolling.
That's right. Because today we are going to ram it down. Darn it. We are going to ram it down. There you go. Ram it down. 1988, recorded in December of 1987 through March of 88. A little bit in Ibiza Sound Studios, but then most of it went to some random middle of nowhere studio in Denmark, as I've read both Rob and KK talk about this. Okay, let's see. We have 50 minutes clocking it in. How did this thing do in the charts? Let's see. Okay, so but down in Peter Kerr's neck of the woods, it reached number 43. Austria, number 14. Up in Mike Ladano's neck of the woods. Yes, I'm plugging your shirt, Mike. Looks kind of nice. And Metal Roger, who you will see very soon. This one got up to number 30. Dutch, number 25. Finnish, number 3. German, number 9. Japanese, number 34. Norwegian, Paul, how you doing? Obi Random, how you doing? Number 5. Also Swedish charts, number 5. Swiss album charts, number 8. UK, 24. US Billboard, 31. Canada goes gold. US, it goes gold. Now, had a couple singles. Ram It Down was released as a single. And then we get this abomination. And yes, I'm calling this an abomination.
Shots fired right off the bat.
You got to, right? So, if you all remember from the Turbo show, we all talked about how they blew it big time by passing Reckless up for the Top Gun soundtrack. Yep. So when their manager, Bill Curbishley, comes along and say, hey, we got another chance to put a movie in a song in the soundtrack. So why they got to do Johnny Be Good for this movie called Johnny Be Good right there. So let's just look at this. Anthony Michael Hall, looks like that's Robert Downey.
Robert Downey.
And Uma Thurman right there. I've never seen this movie. I heard it bombed. So they missed out big time. Now, let's just talk about the backside of this. So you see what's on the B side of this thing. So you're supposed to get Rock You All Around the World, like a live version or some form of, of Rock You All Around the World, right? So let's look at this. All right, there's the front side. All right, there's Johnny Be Good. I don't see any Rock You All Around the World there.
Well, but if you go back to the sleeve, it says unavailable on LP. So I guess
that's right. It really was
all LPs.
It really was unavailable on LP. So enough. That is all that I'm going to say about this. So there you go. Johnny Be Good. That is something I do not like being called Johnny Be Good. So enough of that. Peter, today we want you to start off with, we always let the guest star of the group begin with their assessment on this album. We don't need to ask you about the how you got into it, obviously, because we've heard your story. I will ask you this, though. You said you did not see them on this tour, though, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, then the floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome.
Let's talk some Ram It Down.
All righty. Well, clearly an album that sparks a wide range of emotions from Priest fans. Rankings as they are, this one has a tendency to be very polarizing. That's okay. As we all say when we do these, this is my experience, my view, my ears, and your experience may be different, which is equally as valid and important. So, but what's happening here? There's a history with Judas Priest. They seem at times to maybe stub their toe a bit. And then there is what they call a course correction, where they come out and say, okay, well, maybe that one kind of missed the mark, but how about this? There's a lot of that in their career, right? Some would say British Steel was a little bit too poppy. Bam, right? And they go from there. And we had Turbo before this, and they're like, okay, so where do they go and what's happening here? Well, first thing that's happening is that as they're getting ready to record and everything, drummer Dave Holland, from everything that I've read, and there's not much out there, folks, this is a very kind of quiet knit story for a lot of reasons. Dave's life was very troubled. He's ill, not available, can't play. So let's talk about the big elephant in the room here. What is happening and what is going on with the drums here, right? And he is credited as the drummer. How much of it is him? How much of it is machine? I will say, to my understanding, I don't know. All I know is that as we go through here, some of these tracks sound more like Dave. Some of them do not sound like a human being. Okay, so there's that. But here we go into an album that, in my ears, really does make a nice, big, huge U-turn and says, oh yeah, hold on. So here we go. Right off the bat, this opens with one of the greatest screams in all of metal to open their opening track, Ram It Down, which instantly on display for me, and this is a carryover from both Turbo and especially Fuel for Life, because Fuel for Life is important because it shows us live that what we perceived on Turbo is actually happening. And that is due to better care, health, and attitude and sobriety. Rob is in another plane here. He's on another stratosphere. And I will say, without apology, that this is the strongest Halford vocal performance on this album of his entire career. It is absolutely spot on, masterclass. This is what metal singing is, and this is what the brilliance of Halford is. No limits to his range. His tone is clean, clear, crisp, precise. It is gorgeous. So what are we playing with it? Like I said, we get this great scream and this flamethrower tempo track with these massive, huge, thick sounding guitars. This is not Turbo Lover, folks. This is massive. And I will not understate that, and I will just keep coming back to it. Right off the bat, this is a song that is a call to unity, empowerment, strength, the power of metal, right? Raise the lights, the city lights are calling. We're hot tonight, the time is right, there's nitro in the air. In the street is where we'll meet, we're warning. On the beat, we won't retreat, beware. And it just goes on. It's awesome. I'm going to keep using that word until I figure out something else. It is so aggressive, so intense. It's got so much attitude. It is just exploding. out of the grooves. And you say, okay, well, what about the drums? Yeah, what about them? They're enormous. They're huge. If they're triggered or they're electronic machines, I say kudos to you, because it's the best programmed drums I've ever heard in my life. Because they do exactly what they're intended to do. Hold down and support this new, huge, enormous, aggressive sound that they have brought to this album. It is one of the just great opening tracks. It's kind of neck and neck with me with Exciter, but this is just some really stunning stuff. The choruses are great, full and rich. And we get to one of these beautiful bridges, and we get this great, great drum feel. And it's like, wow, we are together now. And then Rob's at the octave, and off they go into vintage style guitar interplay between KK and Glenn. This is shades of Killing Machine and Stained Class for me. KK into Glenn, into KK, into Glenn, a unison section, and Glenn kind of fills it out. But after they get to the end of this, it's just unleashed whammy bar craziness. Both of them are dive bombing. Rob's screaming through the middle of it, right back into, thousands of cars and, a million guitars. And it just keeps building, blazing, right to the bam, bam, bam. And you're like, towel off. Wow. And I'm like, okay, this is working. I like everything about it. And we get to the next track, Heavy Metal. Yeah, the whole album is kind of, I don't want to say adolescent from the standpoint of metal, like the stereotype Beavis and Butthead. That's very cool. It's so metal, but it kind of is, but I'm okay with it. It's borderline tap, but it's authentic and it works for me. We get into Heavy Metal, this huge solo guitar section, into this big dive bomb, into this huge bass and drum accompaniment where Rob starts singing. Again, he got that laser tone that's going on, but it's super clean. And the guitars come ramping in, and it's huge. It stimulates, regenerates. It's therapeutic healing. It lifts our feet up off the ground and blasts us through the ceiling. Well, you know what? I have done it, and I don't know if anybody else has. I feel that a lot with music that really moves me. That's why I listen to it. It is healing. It is energizing. It is empowering. And this kind of stuff just goes right into my veins, and I feel like I'm plugged in, and it's just surging right through me. And it's really exciting and fun to experience. And what's really cool is that there's a lot of 4 on the quarter note bass drum. As between the eyes, I hear it screaming. It electrifies your inner feelings. And then when they get hot shots waves around, I'm getting the lyrics wrong. I can't read my own writing. Hot shock waves charge the air. More cool syncopation. The band is super tight. And then the chorus is just these rally cries. Heavy metal. What do you want? Heavy metal. What do you want? We will give you what you are asking for. It's that simple. You want it? We'll give it to you. Nothing that you got to think too much about. It's just right there. And I keep coming back to the Midlands here because the lyrics keep referencing steel and molten, and this where the foundries of their upbringing. And Rob really, and Glenn as well, makes it a point. If you're in school and you're hearing bam, bam, bam on your desk, that's got to imprint something, folks. And here it just comes out. It was who they were supposed to be and what they were supposed to do. And again, that has an authenticity to it. You know, it's got this great instrumental section. It comes down and then it comes to this break. And then it just huge. Rob's soaring, just soaring. And he gets to the end. He's just screaming his brains out. And it's just awesome. It's just pure metal. And it's just, can't get enough of that one. We get to Love Zone. This is one of the ones that sounds the most mechanical. You can always kind of tell with a hi-hat because no human being can keep a consistent pressure. There's even some any human's going to have a deviation in just even how much pressure you hit, even if you're playing a straight pattern. This one sounds very mechanical. But and I'm like, oh my God. And then in comes the guitar part. And then Rob, been awake all night, can't get no sleep. Need a steel blue heart walking down the street with your razor nails and your painted smile. You're gonna get richer. I'm gotta get wild. And it's just so, it's like that fist on the cover. It just keeps punching you. And you're like, yeah, hit me again, turn the other cheek, just keep hitting me. It's a lot of double entendre here. There's a lot of sex, metal, sex, lust, metal. Rob was pretty strong with that at this point. You get a halftime section again, classic guitar exchanges, Glenn, KK, and then both of them. I love the solos. I like the syncopation. And I love the tight endings. Everybody get in the love zone. Just bam. Into this huge, enormous riff into Come and Get It. And this to me sounds like Dave's playing. The drums may be processed heavily, but it sounds like his groove. It sounds like his feel. And that's why it works for me. And I'm like, okay, if the tonality is a little bit mechanical or off, okay, I can forgive that. I put on this one, Rob's untouchable here. He has no limits, and what is really cool is he does, from the drumming standpoint, this is why I said, if this is programmed, it's just brilliantly done, because it's eighth notes, and then it goes to a heavy quarter note, and then right back to the eighth notes, back to the heavy quarter note as it goes through the sections of the song, which I think is really, really cool. Can you feel the power? Blinded by the light, keep on going crazy, bringing up the night, shouting out together, boiling like the sun. Metal lives forever, blazing on and on. This is pretty straightforward stuff. This is just, like you said, we got the flag. We're metal. If you were confused on Turbo, you're not anymore. we just made it pretty clear to you that, nope, we're back. Just, full on. Rob just goes nuts at the end. And those Come and Get It's at the end, shades of Love Bites, from Fuel for Life. And the screams that he does at the interlude section of Desert Plains, it's just all power, attitude, aggression, and I put exactly how I like my metal. We get to Hard as Iron. This is a programmed sounding. The double bass on this is so perfectly too perfect. Mm-hmm. But it's the first double bass riff, and it flies along. It's got a lot of the sound effects like Metal Gods, whip, crack, earthquake, boom. Again, the visuals that Rob was good at in something like a Rapid Fire or something like that, where you can You can visually see what he's kind of talking about here. Shock waves, bone to dust. You're messing with a minefield, so expect the worst. Blazing unto glory. There's thunder in my veins, and nothing stands before me. Forever I'll remain. Hard as iron. Again, let's talk double entendre if we want to. We'll leave it at that. More great exchanging. This album, more than in a long time, we get a great combination of KK and Glenn trading off together. It's a very unified delivery from the band aspect of it. The double bass stuff is used sparingly, thank God, because I just do not like that constant droning. It just takes over the track and just kind of makes things not so great. The solo section in here really had shades of Point of Entry to me, Heading Out to the Highway, some of the other songs, and it really worked. And yeah, it's heavy, it's aggressive, it's super fast. And that's a pretty strong side of an album from my listening standpoint. Get to Blood Red Skies on side 2. It's moody, atmospheric, and has elements of Beyond the Realms of Death as it starts. But I will say this. This is maybe, and the example I would use is to what Ultimate Halford can sound like. His lower range, as the sun goes down, I move around, keep into the shadows. I mean, his voice is so crystalline. It is just crystal clear. No gunk, no extra distortion. No, it's just beautiful tone. And then in comes the heavy, kind of cybernetic pounding pulse that starts driving. And then Rob's voice changes. It starts to get edgy and it just starts to build, cybernetic heartbeat, digital precise. Pneumatic fingers nearly had me in their vice. Again, there's those pneumatic hammers again. And the referencing to metal and power and steel and heaviness. You won't break me, you won't make me, you won't take me under blood red skies. It's got a beautiful halftime breakdown where Rob just soars over the top of it into a great lick and solo section, and it's just like, has Halford ever sounded better? Not that I've heard. It's just great. I love the harmonies. And when they get to the end, You'll Never Take Me Alive, Rob is just up breaking glass. He's just holding these notes and it's so effortless, and it's got some nice overdub tom sections in it, like the studio version of Desert Plains does. And, and it's a great mood change versus the faster speed approach, the thrash approach of the track before it. So it really stands out nice rhythmically. I'm a rocker. This is, more great screams from Rob, and it hits this just big unison, da, 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 the greatest times, and yeah, it's kind of storytelling. It's just like, okay, kids, let's sit around the fire and talk about the days of metal yore, right? Right? They're locked inside me and they're carved in stone. I've broken hearts, made people sing. I mean, you can see him, he's in his chair. Well, back in the day, this is what I did, and, it's just really cool. There's some super chunky guitars underneath it, just which sound like the intro to Solar Angels, which I think is kind of cool. But he's holding his notes out, and if you don't really notice it or pay attention, you just kind of take it for granted. But it is a change. You listen to the way he sang on Vengeance and the way he sang on Defenders, especially live. He wasn't holding his notes out anymore. He was cutting them off. He was chopping them up. He was chopping them down. And it's just, and what I love is they get to the section, I'm a rocker, and they break it down, and you get this huge bah, 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 bam, and it changes the whole feel and then kicks right back in. And another great track for me. I love this. Okay, so you have your little track there, and I will say this, okay, not a very good idea, right? Rob's opening scream is great, you know? Yeah. I mean, this, okay. I don't mind the verses. I don't. I think they're okay. Maybe the tail end of the riff is a bit cheesy, but it's the choruses that I think that make everybody just want to find something sharp and stab themselves with it. You know, the go, go, it's so nasally. Go, Johnny, go, go, go. Right. That's bad. Right? That's just not good. Good solos, only video from the album, which is a shock that they were because they were pretty consistent on their previous records about having multiple videos, but this is it. So this was your representation. And I will say, maybe in part, some people's perception of this album may be because all they've heard is Johnny Be Good. And if that's your case, I understand that if you may not think very highly of it. Just a bad choice. It's just not a good song. And to the fans of the world, thank God they never played this live. Thank you. And then we get to Love It to Death. And I will tell you, this is my favorite track on the album. And
okay,
the drums are stupid huge. I mean, they're just, you envision the drummer playing with sticks this big, and each drum is this deep. I mean, it's just knocking buildings over. And it's super simple. Kick on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4, just bam, bang, bam, bang. And you get me up, then we won't both get down. We roll all night making heavy sounds. I'm all tied up on your bed. I'd rather be inside your head. Okay. You do with that what you wish. And here's a great example that during those versions, that kick is super, super simple, 1 and 3. But then you get to don't do this, do it like that. All of a sudden, the bass drum gets super busy. Boom, boom, bam, boom, 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 bah. And then back to the quarter note. Boom, boom, bam, boom, 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 boom. Syncopating the guitar riff and the melody line. And I love this little break section. I'll teach you a lesson that you won't forget. Why don't you save your breath? Because I'm going to love you to death. And then it kicks in again. I love that. Comes down, does it another time through. And then it gets into my favorite part of the album. It says, baby, you're the start of the show. And then the drums. And it just riff. And you can just see them doing in the line. And then KK just goes nuts. And it's so heavy. It's so glorious. It's so Priest for me. And I just love what that does. And then it kicks back in. And then they get to the end. And this is where everything just kind of just goes into mayhem. And, you know, ooh, gonna love you to death. Da, 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 love you to death. And then Rob, love you to death, love you to death. And the band picks up the double time. Right. And he's like, take me back. Wow, scream, do a lot. He's just going nuts. Wow. And it's just love it. Absolutely love it. Monsters of Rock. We've seen this before. Heavy duty, stuff like that. Defenders of the Faith, right? Again, very, very processed drums here, you know, and it's dredgy and super slow and just plotty, like it's carrying 50,000 pounds behind it. You know, it's you're drudging uphill in the mud. You know, it's just spoken at first. It comes out a little more. And again, we've got more referencing to the foundries and the Midlands and the steel. You know, I imagine Jack Black being really thrilled with this. Yeah. And of course he's who he is. And millions roared and millions cheered this spectacle on stage, and everyone went crazy as it bellowed out in rage. That kind of sums up the album for me. It's not a great track, but in the context of everything that's come with it, I find this much more enjoyable than, like I said, Defenders or Heavy Duty or United or something like that. And it ends an album that is very different than what came before, but it just seems to carry elements to me that just seemed to resonate, and it just gets better every listen. Every time I hear it, I just smile, and I just feel like, even if it's my own little secret that nobody else gets, I'm okay. I'm so okay with that. And if someone wants to jump on board and surge away with me, that's okay. But if you don't, I'm okay with that as well, because there's just more for me, and that's fine. If I'm ranking this one, this is a real high one for me. This is my third favorite Priest album. This is a 9.5 for me. I absolutely love this record from top to bottom. So that was probably a little lengthy. Sorry about that, but
love it.
I do
All right,
too.
for next week, we talk about Pete. No, I'm just kidding. No. Just
next episode we wonder if Pete needs to be committed.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely no. That was brilliant. That's why I call Peter the professor, our Encyclopedia Britannica, because that, my friends, that was a master class right there, folks.
Thank you.
Now, John the Music Nut, I'm sorry you have to follow him up again, but let's hear what you got to say. See if Peter's changed our views a little bit here. So,
okay, what we said off air, Peter, right before what I said off air, I think I know. Yeah. Okay. And now for a rebuttal, a very respectful rebuttal. Because a lot of things that Pete says here, I agree with. Yes, Rob's finest vocal performance. Yes, they're going back to their roots musically, lyrically.
Right.
A lot of songs that Pete loves on here, I love too. But there are songs on here I do not love at all. What we love.
Absolutely.
The opening track. Yes. People forget about this song and that scream at the beginning because Painkiller came after it.
Right.
So, yes, this is a very underrated track by Judas Priest. This is a killer opener. The lyrics they're not going towards the little teeny boppers and the young teenagers anymore. They're going back to the metalheads, the heavy metal fans. Very fast paced. The guitar solos, we got that great back and forth between KK and Glenn again. Awesome. I miss this. This is a excellent opening track. I don't know if it's one of their best opening tracks, but it is excellent. Heavy metal, the drum machines are apparent here, but it transforms into a good anthem. It has those lyrics. They're all, some people would call this cliched. I wouldn't say that. I think this song really builds a momentum. Excellent pre-chorus that goes into the simple but very effective heavy metal. What do you want? Into that chorus. That's all you really have to do with this song. You don't have to something that's just going to stick in our brains. I don't like it as much as the title song, but it's good. I don't like Love Zone at all. It's a song about groupies and hookers, and well, actually, I shouldn't say I don't like it at all. I do like that little cool boogie riff they have going, separating the choruses, going back into the verses. That little riff is pretty cool.
Right.
I don't think that's the only thing I really like about the song. It's I don't think it's a well-written song. Now Come and Get It. Now, when Peter and I met each other after we did a Contrarian show, we talked about this album, and I talked about what I didn't like about it. And one of the things I said was, Come and Get It is like By the Books Priest. There's nothing that I haven't heard before. Upon further listens, I do appreciate this song more, and I think it should have been the single. Because if you think about what would go over well on radio and what would go over well as a video, I could see it in my head, and I could hear this on the radio. This would have went over well. It's very catchy. It's got that driving, it's a driving riff, but it's not too fast. It's very accessible. Another great pre-chorus into the chorus. Rob's vocals on here, as throughout the album, are outstanding. This would have fit in perfect on radio in 1988, but we didn't hear it unless you saw them live, which I'll talk about later. Now we get to my two favorite songs on the album. I think Hard as Iron is wonderful. That's why I quoted that lyric at the beginning of the show.
Right.
That was the bridge. The bridges are back on this album. Like, even on the albums that you're not a big fan of, they were still putting in those bridges. How much you like them is up to you. I thought the bridge worked perfect on here. Yes, it's very fast. You could clearly, it is a drum machine because it's just too perfect. Yeah. Too perfect. But it's driving, it's metal, it's glorious. It's a song of perseverance. It's positive. Yeah, you can maybe read into other little things about what it's about, but this song I loved in 88, and I love it now. And I don't have the cassette anymore, but this is a song I've hit home with me from the first listen. Blood Red Skies. You could say this is Rob's finest vocal performance, period. When I hear the beginning of this, I think more rock-a-rolla,
A little bit.
experimentation, with that and a little bit of Sad Wings from the beginning. And Rob's vocal on here, as Pete pointed out, you hear that great low range, and then he goes in that high range. That scream in the end before the song stops and the drum machine kicks in is phenomenal. Here, the drum machine's perfect. It works. This song is magnificent. It's a shame they shouldn't have played it live. We'll go into that. We'll go into that later. I think this is the finest song on the album. It has such a great build. It has such a great pre-chorus into the chorus. Fantastic. The guitar solos on here, at first they're more for color. It's more the rhythm driving it, and Rob's vocal taking you in, and you hear those haunting keyboards in the background. It all adds up to a great track. Everything on here works. I know I say that sometimes too often, but here it's not a cliche. Here I truly believe it. And from here, to me, this album takes a point of entry like drop in quality. Meaning the last four songs on point of entry, I think really take that album down. I feel the same way about this album. Having said that, I'm a Rocker is the best of the last four songs. To me, I still think it's By the Books Priest. It's decent. It sounds like a lot of stuff they do later on Angel Retribution, where the songs were heavy, but you're kind of thinking to yourself, I've heard this before and I've heard it better. That's how I feel about I'm a Rocker. Johnny Be Good. I don't think I can add any more to what my friends John and Pete have said about it. This is not good. Yeah, the verses are a little better. That chorus is bad. But yes, we got some nice screams from Rob on here. It's bad. They made a mistake. We're not putting Reckless on Top Gun. And then they latched this song onto a movie that was not successful, and I never bothered to see it because I've not heard anything positive about it.
It stinks.
I believe it. And this is not a good. Now think about it with Judas Priest's career. They covered songs on 3 albums in a row: Diamonds and Rust, Better by You, Better Than Me, and Green Manlishi with the 2-prong crown.
Right.
And they did a magnificent job with all of those songs. Joan Baez liked the version that Judas Priest did. Now keep in mind, at that time, Judas Priest were not very well known. Their albums were finally just charting in the lower part of the Billboard Top 200. When you hear this compared to those 3, it's night and day. This is an abomination. I don't like Love You to Death. It reminds me, lyrically, it's Eat Me Alive's little sister. There is a nice bridge in it. When you don't have the guitars playing, it sounds like The Stroke by Billy Squier musically.
That would be one really ugly family reunion there, Mr.
Good.
Expand.
I don't think those 2 relatives should be in the same state.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh.
I don't like the whips and the screams at the end. I'm just not into this song. I mean, I've tried. Like I said, the bridge, you could take
It's a
me
bit
places.
pretentious.
I'm sorry?
It's a bit pretentious.
It's
almost gratuitous.
Yeah.
I mean, there's subtlety and then there's voyeuristic.
Yes.
Something like that.
It treads a fine line.
It does try to find line. But if you all like it out there, that's cool. And I don't care for Monsters of Rock. I think it's just sluggish. Now, I don't mind the lyric. Because it's talking about the force of metal and rock and where it came from.
Right.
It's decent, but that drum machine is just bad on here, and I just don't care for it. I think it brings this album, which has some very good songs on it, to a sickening thud. So I ranked this a little higher than I did when I first met Pete and John. I will give this a 6. There is a lot to like on it, but there's a lot on here I don't need to hear again.
Okay.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
All right. So I think Rob kind of answers a question as to why there wasn't more than one video from this album. And I think that was mainly because Dave was just not happy with his position in the band. I think he made it very known in the studio that he wasn't feeling good. He wasn't feeling it. And then, of course, then you find out, oh, you just got replaced by a drum machine. Well, I don't think that set too well with him either. And it didn't do a lot of, he tells a couple stories in the book where that tour he was happy for that tour to finally get over, because I think he and Dave and the band just were not getting along and stuff like that. So, yeah. I think that's probably why. I think that the band was just already pretty fractured would be my guess. But when I was 18 years old when this album came out, I was blaring this loud. I can remember in my car with my friend Mike when I would travel up to PA to visit friends and family, and we would ride together. And I remember this album playing heavy. and I guess I was just really into that album for all of the anthemic stuff that's about it. You know, just about every song here is anthemic in some way, shape, or form, for the most part. I mean, yes, it's the whole metal waving. And yeah, at 18 years old, that's what I was all about. I was all about waving that metal flag. I'm not going to deny that. But let me think about some other things I was also listening to in 1988. Oh, I don't know. Let me think. Slayer, South of Heaven. Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Those two albums come to mind rather quickly. Um, let's see. I was probably starting to appreciate Guns N' Roses a little bit more by that point, and I think I was also appreciating Operation Mindcrime.
Mindcrime, yeah.
So those four, I was probably getting a lot of those four albums, and then this one just kind of ticked the Judas Priest box where I needed it. So, ram it down. Chugging intro to the album, great scream, iconic scream. You could put it right up there with Won't Get Fooled Again and The Number of the Beast. You could put it right up there because it's just as iconic in my opinion. Obviously anthemic in its lyrics, but a very good up tempo song, very very much like say a Screaming for Vengeance up tempo kind of song. It just got that power, and it's just a great track. Heavy metal, you got that Tipton unaccompanied solo in the beginning, thinking, I wonder if he's been listening to some of those Shrapnel guys that were coming out, because all those Malmsteen like guys, clones, the Tony McAlpines, the Jason Beckers, the Marty Friedmans, the Joey Tafolas, the Vinnie Moores, and countless others that were coming out on Shrapnel Records. Well, I'm sure those guys were going to leave guys like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden in the dust. So, well, Tipton was a little bit more of a fluid player, and he could play that kind of stuff a little bit more than KK could. But still, great song. Still a good song. Yeah, maybe you still think it should have been something more majestic sounding. If you were waving that heavy metal flag, there was something about the music though that it should have sounded more majestic. Now, don't get me wrong. I still love Halford's vocals. Yes, I think he sounds a little like, to me, I think he's almost trying to sound like a young Robert Plant if he had gone metal. I just feel like I hear that when Robert Plant would sing that higher register in the early days. But if Robert had just gone metal with that, that's kind of what it sounded like to me in that song. Yeah, I think to me all the electronic stuff kind of takes it down a notch for me. And then a key change. What in the name of living on a prayer are we talking about here? Heavy metal doesn't do key changes, for crying out loud. Come on.
How Barry Manilow.
Like that.
How Barry Manilow.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. I mean, but again, it was a nice transition. Rob's voice goes with the flow really, really well. So I can't, again, yeah, okay, it's silly, but again, Rob's pulled off. He's got he had the chops to pull it off. Love Zone. To me, that drum, is it me or that opening drum beat kind of ripped off from Footloose?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. There was some other kind of song that kind of reminded me of that. I don't know. But anyway, maybe that was their.
It's also similar if you changed its mood a bit. David Bowie's from Let's Dance, Modern Love.
Yeah,
it's got a little bit of that. I'll draw distinctions, but I can understand how you would think.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the first thing that came to my mind. But here again, decent riffs, good. So, one thing I will say, all of these songs have good riffs, good playing by the both players. I'm just going to blanket that out for the rest of this discussion for me. Lyrically, typical of the times. This is where Judas Priest had to be followers and had to follow along with the trend of what all the hair bands were singing about. Come and Get It. another very anthemic kind of a metal anthem here. Again, I thought was a decent song. But Hard as Iron, that's when I say thank you, Judas Priest. You kind of made me suffer a little bit through these last three songs. You brought the intensity back. And to me, that song certainly does that. This is the more of the Judas Priest that we've been wanting to hear. That harkening back to the Screaming for Vengeance, the Defenders of the Faith, and maybe stuff like that I was familiar with at 18. That's what we wanted to hear. Again, solid playing by everybody. Everything sounds really strong here. So it's great side closer. It was always the tendency to what was usually the tendency to end the albums off with a slow song, ballad, or the side A, right? You always wanted to end up with something slow. No, not Priest. No, they decided to kick it up a notch or three. Instead, they start their side B off with a slower epic song. And my God, this song is just perfect to me. To me, Halford's vocals here, there's passion. You hear an absolute deep passion in every timbre of his voice in this song. And it's just majestic. Love this song. You get those turbo kind of guitar synthesizers playing, which I think it just adds to the song so well. But this song, I mean, man, this is like the metal spirit that just doesn't want to die. And it says, come on. Great song. Absolutely love it. Would love to hear them. Would love to see this live. I'm a Rocker, another anthemic song. Stand tall about who you are. Don't conform to society. We've heard these kind of themes from Priest a lot. Johnny Be Good, another cover of the song we've heard a number of times. They do okay with it. It's great that they do their own thing with it, but love you to death. Oy vey. That was the first things I wrote down for this one. I was like, again, you have a really good, decent lyric here, or not a decent lyric, but you have a good, decent riff. Yeah, some of the lyrics are kind of, but the part that makes me go oy vey, because I'm gonna love you to death. The way Rob delivers that is just so silly. I don't know. It's just, to me, he just like, I love you to death. It's just, I don't know. There's just something weird and goofy about it to me. It just, again, then by the end of the song, he throws the goofiness out the window, and he takes that line of, and he gets that high scream. And like Peter says, then it goes and they all just start going nuts at the end of that song. And it does end off a lot better. Monsters of Rock, a slow, grinding, sludgy song that you would expect from the Black Country. And that sums it up. Really, this really is a tribute to heavy metal, because it pours out of those foundries that you see in the Black Country. And that's really where I think they pay the homage to this song. I mean, so yeah, okay, the electronics kind of kill me with it too, but I think it works with the song. One thing about this whole album that I think always kind of bugged me was Glenn and KK's guitar tones. There was some of it, forgive me if I'm wrong, but remember back in the day when you first started getting CDs, they had these little things in the one corner where it would say AAD or ADD or DDD. Who remembers what those are? AAD, analog recording, analog mixing,
digital
or digital mastering or something like that. Analog recording, digital mixing, digital mastering, and of course, digital recording, digital mastering, and digital mixing. I don't know, but I want to say
this is one of the first.
This was one of those first DDDs, I think, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling there's something about that all digital thing that just, it took some of the warmth out of what you feel with the analog recording, maybe, and it just sounded almost too processed,
Metallic.
too metallic, yes, but not in a good way, not in the heavy metal way, but
No.
just a very cold feeling. And that's kind of how the guitars sounded to me. Most of the guitars in this album sounded like that to me. I noticed it back when I was 18, and I still noticed it now. So, but again, there's a lot of monster riffs in guitar playing in this album. So I can't completely fault that. So I give it a 7. I'm actually, it's not, it's a little below Turbo, but I think I like a lot more Turbo than I do this one. I think just all the electronics and all the digital stuff, I think in 1987, 1988, they just hadn't gotten a good grasp of yet. As far as how to really truly record it well. Without it sounding like something like a heavy metal new wave kind of thing. To me, that's how I look at, that's how I'll take it. So
May I add a
Very
couple
good.
things here?
floor is yours.
Great summation, by the way. Very well done. I have just a couple notes here. One, we need to point out that this was the last album with Tom Allen for quite a while, until Firepower, studio-wise. He did one co-produce on a live album. Also, I think it's important that this, in the history of the entire discography, plays a kind of important role because it is a transition. This is moving from Turbo to what becomes Painkiller. And I would suggest that if somehow they just had jumped from Turbo to Painkiller, you would have just freaked everybody out. I mean,
That's true.
It's too drastic.
Excellent point.
It's just way too much to go from Turbo Lover to Painkiller. And there are elements of this record that they hold on to and they take into Painkiller. And then they add some new other elements to it. Rob never sings this smoothly, but with clarity and edge and power again. He doesn't do that again. And the riffs on this record, I want to draw a distinction. To me, they are more chordal than line-based. When you get to Stained Class and Killing Machine, it's a riff. Here, it's the riff are chords, not singular lines. There are very few one-note lines that run in this album. It's all chords, which just makes it, the soundscape, enormous because it's always saturated. There's no chance really for it to break down, which is why the beginning of Blood Red Skies, with a more minimalistic approach to it, all of a sudden goes, oh, my ear's going, something's different. It's thinned out. There's more space. There's more air to breathe. This is a consistent, from the first Scream to the end of Monsters. It's like a tidal wave. It's a tsunami that just goes wham through every track. And you either get swept up in it or it knocks you off your board because there's really not a place to catch your breath. And from that standpoint can be a negative. I'm also, one of the albums that I think is seminal that was right around this era is that Halloween had released Keeper Part 1 in 87. And I think that was an extremely important record because we now have kind of a new member to the singing club with Mr. Kiske. And what was he doing? Soaring, high, clean, super powerful register stuff, but with very, very progressive but melodic undertones. It is an important album. But let's talk for a second about Dave Holland, because it's very rare that someone comes into a studio situation, and it has happened what happened, and the drummer stays in the band for the tour.
Yep.
This is very unusual, folks. Usually if you say, yeah, we're going to replace you, the guy goes, see ya, and you need a new drummer for the tour because they're gone. And for those who listen to the album and go, well, it's just all machine, it's all machine, it's all machine, he did play the tour. John, you saw him.
Yes, I did.
Okay. 4 tracks, and you'll talk more about it, I'm sure, from this album were played live, and Dave plays them. And they sound like the record.
Yes.
And in fact, you say, well, Ram It Down has to be a machine. It's just too fast. Live, it was faster. And Dave is killing it. He's crushing it. The tracks they play sounded amazing from the album. And maybe even more how people maybe really wanted them, because you've got the guitars toned in for live performance. They're live drums. And you say, okay, this is what the album should have sounded like with this material. And the last thing I'll say is this. Sometimes I have to draw a distinction between content and delivery. Sometimes you get an album that's got not such great material, but it sounds great. That doesn't last long in your listening because the songs aren't very good. If the material is something you enjoy, but maybe there's a compromise somewhere sonically, and an album I instantly think of is Passion Works by Heart. Great, great album. Except Danny Carmassi is using Simmons drums for his toms, which instantly dates it. But I'm like, the songs are too good. I don't care. So from my aspect, yeah, if the digitization and the computerization and the mechanicalness of the drums could easily turn people off, I accept that 100%. But I'm thinking in my head, I just enjoy the content so much that it's not bothering me. And I'm just going for what it felt like and what it was delivering and what it made me, how it made me react. I'll worry about the production part of that after, or if at all. So those are just a couple quick things I wanted to.
Excellent.
Yeah. No, perfect
Love it.
summation. Because it's true. Because I think back to when I was 18 when I heard this album and what it made me feel. And it was pretty intense. So John, you were about 16 or so when this came out.
17.
17.
I just
okay.
turned 17.
Just turned
I was
17.
26.
Okay.
So, all right. So let's hear some tour stuff, and let's hear your story of when you saw this tour.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, Ram It Down tour was called the Mercenaries of Metal tour. It started April 3rd, and this was just the video clip for Johnny Be Good. It wasn't necessarily a concert. It was performed at the Roxy Club in Amsterdam, Netherlands. This would be the only time that Johnny Be Good would be performed in front of an audience. And they did a few other songs too.
And if you notice, you do not see Dave in the video.
Yeah, that's true.
You do not see
You're
him.
right.
He's not in.
It's true. I never thought about that.
No, I never thought about that either, actually.
Just like the cover of Unleashed with Les, Dave's not in it.
I'll have to go back and look at that
Interesting.
again.
Yep.
On mute, of course.
Excellent. Proper tour started May 7th in 1988, and that started in Europe. Europe was May 7 through June 22nd. Now, the opening band in Europe was Bonfire, and they were promoting the Fireworks album. They played, I'll just I'll just run through the countries really. They opened in Stockholm, Sweden. They also played Norway, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, France, Spain, Italy, Switzerland, England, Scotland, and Wales. Took a little break. They come back to North America on July 20, and they played Canada. They played Montreal, Quebec, Toronto, Ontario, and Ottawa, Ontario. For the majority of the US tour, Cinderella was the opener. Okay. Now, and I'll go into this further about my experience seeing them on this tour. I'll say this. If this was say we take things back a few years earlier, or even go a few years later, this would be a complete clash musically. But I think the fact that because Judas Priest were going a little more commercial in Turbo on 86, and there's still some commercial stuff on this album, they thought Cinderella would be a good fit. I didn't think it was a good fit musically. What Cinderella had to do was they had to play their heavier stuff that they normally wouldn't play. Right. So you didn't hear Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone that night. Okay. During that tour, when I saw them. Okay.
And I would have been okay with that.
Right. So, they're playing songs like Second Wind, which is one of their heavier tracks from Long Cold Winter, songs like that. But they played the Centrum in Worcester, Massachusetts, Nassau Veterans Coliseum, Uniondale, New York, just as what I've been doing. I'm only going to give you highlights. I'm not going to go through the whole tour because it would just take too long. Now, on Setlist FM, on August 8th, they list Broome County Veterans Memorial Arena in Binghamton, New York. This was the show that I attended.
Oh,
okay.
This date is incorrect.
Oh.
Now, I didn't keep ticket stubs back then, but I believe this show was on July 25th of 1988. Anyone out there who's gone to this show, please put in the comments, confirm if I'm correct here. But I believe this show was in July. It was not in August. And yes, they were magnificent that night. Actually, before we go on to the rest of the dates of the tour, they did 4 songs from this album live.
Yep.
As Pete alluded to. Ram It Down, Heavy Metal, Come and Get It, I'm a Rocker. They went over well live. Yes, that was Dave back there. Dave was playing his ass off on these songs, especially Ram It Down, which is at such a fast pace.
And to start with it.
I'm sorry?
And to start with it right
exactly.
right off the bat.
Actually, Ram It Down, I don't.
And they didn't open with that.
They didn't open with Ram It Down. No. Yeah, they played Ram It Down about
bottom third.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 12 or something. My mistake.
Yeah, no, all good. But this was also a tour, and this is something that Pete and I talked about in a discussion when we first met each other. Because, and Pete pointed this out, with Rob's voice being strong again, stronger than it's ever been, he's doing Beyond the Realms of Death live again. He's doing Victim of Changes live again. They took them out for a little while.
Yeah.
But they brought them back because now he could pull off those songs with aplomb. Okay. They were doing more 70s stuff than they had been doing for several years. They did Ripper on this tour. I remember it clear as day.
Yep.
I did buy a tour shirt from this tour, which I talked about with John off air. They had the Judas Priest logo on the front. On the back of the shirt, it said, Ram It Down, Shove It Up, and there's a big metal middle finger in the middle of the back of the shirt.
Something to bring home to mom.
Well, not only bring home to mom, Pete. They weren't too fond of it, but once your grades are good, it's fine. But I wore it to shirt, but I wore it to school. And
oh boy.
One of my teachers, rest in peace, Mr. Charles Wilson. You were a very good teacher. He knew I had this shirt on. I don't know where he saw it before. Maybe he saw me wear it another time at school.
Maybe he was at the show.
No, he wasn't that cool. He was a good man, but he wasn't a heavy metal guy. But John, if you take that jacket off, you get suspended for 5 days. I listened to Mr. Wilson. I did not get suspended. But so that was but they were phenomenal that night. Cinderella, I love Cinderella, but it wasn't, I would have preferred what they did on the West Coast when they brought in Slayer. And at that point, Slayer was just coming out with South of Heaven. So I would have preferred that. I was a fan of all these bands at that point. By this point, my musical tastes were expanding. I was a heavy metal hard rock guy, but I was also getting a lot of classic rock. Anyway, back to the tour. August 10, Hershey Park Stadium, Hershey, Pennsylvania. August 13, Capitol Center, Landover, Maryland. They did 2 dates. August 15, Ohio Center, Columbus, Ohio. August 21, Marcus Square Arena, Indianapolis, Indiana. Was got to throw one out for Joe. August 24, Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, Illinois, or Rosemont, Illinois. And for Pete as well. You grew up in Chicago as well, correct?
Yep. Oh yeah. Lived there for a long, long time.
Okay. August 27, the Met Center in Bloomington, Minnesota. September 9, Charlotte Coliseum, Charlotte, North Carolina. September 11, Boutwell Auditorium, Birmingham, Alabama. Yeah, I'm trying.
I wasn't living here yet, but yeah, there you go.
Yep, there you go. I'm trying to get some places that I normally don't talk about. We had Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, Tennessee, the Kiefer Uno Lakefront Arena, New Orleans, Louisiana. Interesting that Tom Kiefer and Cinderella was playing there that night. Coca-Cola Starplex Amphitheater, Dallas, Texas. And then September 30, Lawler Events Center, Reno, Nevada. This is where Slayer would join the tour. And they only did a few more dates. They didn't do nearly as many dates with Slayer as they did Cinderella. But we got the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City, Utah, Compton Terrace, Chandler, Arizona, Cal Expo Amphitheater, Sacramento, California, Celt Arena, Fresno, California, San Diego Sports Arena, San Diego, California. One more date in Canada. We got Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver, British Columbia, Seattle Center Coliseum, Seattle, Washington. October 20 was the end of the tour. That was at Portland Memorial Coliseum in Portland, Oregon.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Oh, I'm done. There you go.
For those who are curious and or want to go see what this was like live, and not just to get a sense of what the Ram It Down material was like live, but what Rob was like on this tour. Probably the preeminent show is September 18th. And if the dates line up correctly, that should be, they call it Pembroke Pines, Florida.
Yeah, Pembroke Pines.
There is an absolutely incredible version of it and multiple other versions because it was recorded from multiple sources on YouTube. And I'm telling you, and I'm just going to run this real fast. First of all, there are 18 tracks. So first of all, that's a long show. 18 is glorious if you get that many tracks from a headliner. 9 albums are represented here. And when you go Electric Eye, Hellion Electric Eye, Metal Gods, Sinner, Breaking the Law, Come and Get It, and I'm a Rocker, The Sentinel, The Ripper, Beyond the Realms of Death, into Some Heads Are Gonna Roll, Turbo, Ram It Down, Heavy Metal, Victim of Changes, Green Manalishi, Living After Midnight, You Got Another Thing Coming, Hellbent for Leather. That is a remarkable set list.
Absolutely.
That is really, really strong. The vintage with the middle, Turbo has disappeared. And as you guys pointed out, Turbo is the only one that's going to survive. Turbo Lover.
Correct.
But 4 from the new. And we've seen other bands, they released albums. If they didn't believe in them or don't like them, they don't play them. Now they don't last long. The rest of the album, they've never played them. Blood Red Skies is rejuvenated in 2011, 2012, and then again in 2021 and 2022. And even KK's Priest is playing Blood Red Skies.
Oh, okay.
And Tim is doing a spot on. Yeah, he's kicking the crap out of it. But the other stuff, Love Zone, never played. Hard as Iron, never played. Love You to Death, Monsters Rock, never played. And Johnny Be Good, never played. So
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm a Rocker. They brought back for Angel Retribution tour.
let me see. 2005. They played it 98 times. Yes. I just hadn't got to that point yet.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah, the 2011, 2012 was the Epitaph tour for Blood Red Skies, and 2021, 22 was that 50 years of metal tour or whatever that was. But Ram It Down was 98 only, heavy metal, was 88 only, and heavy metal didn't last past the tour either. So interesting.
So when was that Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum in New York date? Roughly.
July 28th.
Okay.
Which would have been, I saw them July 25th. Okay. I believe.
Okay. So it's if for those who have read Rob's book, he says in here, Dave was still brooding about being sidelined on Ram It Down. He was not a happy bunny. And when we got to the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum in New York, it came to a head. Dave was so fed up that he declared he wouldn't go on. His back was hurting, he said, so he couldn't play. I sat by him for 2 hours, commiserating him, trying to sweet talk him into changing his mind. By the time he relented, we went on and we were an hour late. So anybody who was at that show, that probably was a tough one. The gig was solid, but back in the dressing room, Dave threw another tantrum, strop, as he says here. Right. He hurled a few insults at Glenn, whom he saw as the prime instigator of our embrace of a drum machine, and said he was quite fed up of life on the road. And by the end of the tour, he would quit the band. So that's, if there's anything that needs to be said, unfortunately, Dave has passed on and cannot speak for himself now. But that's obviously where obviously things started coming to a head, was about that New York gig there. So
it's great insight on that, John, because I think it's interesting. This is just my personal opinion. Obviously, as a drummer, I've said this a lot. And I want to qualify this so people don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say here. So I just want to make this really, really clear. Scott Travis is a tremendous musician and a really, really great drummer. That doesn't mean I have to care for what he has brought to the table as far as Judas Priest. There's other stuff that he's done that I just absolutely love. I loved him in Fight. I loved him in Racer X. I loved him in other things. I do think it's ironic because you mentioned the key part of it is that, in my opinion, and as you move on through your series, I would just put this earworm in your head that they brought in what I perceive is a more mechanical drummer. Scott is a more regimented, square boxed player. He doesn't have that lilty feel that Dave did and Les had, and certainly Simon had it as well. You can decide good or bad. You like it, you don't like it. This is my personal observation as a musician and as a Priest fan, that they brought in someone who plays much more mechanically, very, very steady, but it has a more mechanical feel to it. And I find that a bit ironic. Now, clearly, he has the double bass, that the change in direction and the focus they want to go on, and that has carried over through the rest of their entire career, that the double bass is an element that they clearly want to incorporate in their style. Doesn't mean I have to like it or not like it. That's for a conversation for a different day. But I do think it's interesting that the person they did bring in, I view as a more regimented or mechanical drummer.
Right. Well, one thing I also want to mention is here. We talked a lot about how Rob's voice was on this album. You know, Rob's also talks about in this book, this was the first album he recorded where he was completely sober. And so for him, that was kind of a weird feeling for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that was a new thing he had to get used to as well. He had to get used to that whole sobriety thing. Now, as that tour would wind down, then a bit of a dark cloud starts coming along. And we've already talked about this
Yes.
in Stained Class.
Right.
And we know what comes up before the next album would come out, that the lawsuit on the two kids from Vegas.
Right.
And them defending themselves throughout that time period. That was a tough time. I'll read more about that in both books as I get there. But I think that dark cloud, and then of course with Dave leaving and then getting them Scott Travis into the band, then you get this monster.
Well, let me suggest to you real quick. I said at the beginning that Priest has a history of course corrections.
Mm-hmm.
So we get Ram It Down, may not be perceived very well in the larger masses. Again, so for them, it's maybe kind of a two swings because Turbo was kind of stomach punch commercially. They lose the drummer. They then are on trial. And let's not mince words here. They're on trial for their lives here.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if they get convicted in some crazy alternate world, jail time, who knows what? Their lives. And then the thing that Rob has always done is that when they get to Painkiller, it's like, okay, you think metal's the problem? How about this?
Yeah.
And it's just open your chest, let the rage out, and go here. And from that point on, and I've said this before, and I think this is a good spot for it. And I was talking to John below on that. My perception is with Rob on Turbo and in Paint and in Ram It Down, Rob Halford is singing and performing more as Rob Halford. He gets to Painkiller. From then on, he's the metal god. They're different. This album was Rob Halford. And then he changes and has to carry, and he wants to carry that flag, and everything is metal, 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 metal. I'm the metal. Every love metal, got to save metal. It's up to us. If it's not for us, it'll die. That's how he feels. We singularly have to keep this alive. And so he plays the role. And I'm not saying it's not authentic because it's 100% him. But I do see a distinction between that. But that's what happens with Painkiller. Anyways, I don't want to tread on other territory here.
And no, that's good stuff. But yeah, so more on Painkiller next week when we get we've got some folks lined up for that one. But I won't let the cat out of the bag for that just yet. But let's see. So you can still see John on the deep dive Y&T series. All the episodes are recorded, just waiting for Tim to unleash them. And it was
on Tim's Vinyl
on
Confessions.
Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Thank you.
You got
Gotta say the name of the channel. It's always linked. So you always can go check it out. Peter, you just did a show with Tom Curlis, I think his name
Yep,
is.
yep. It's
Curlis?
Curlis Mania. Yep.
Curlis Mania. That's a new one I need to start checking out. You just did a show on Zep 3 versus Zep 4.
Al Moore.
Ooh, I just listened to Zep 4 earlier today and I thought, wow, this is still so majestic to me.
It's a good time.
So I'll have to watch that show. So I'll look forward to that.
And you and I just had a post that we did with Bicycle Legs.
Yep. We did the instrumental show with Bicycle Legs with a stellar panel, and they asked me to be a part of it anyway. So
Come on.
So yeah, you can.
I'm the one who feels fortunate to be included.
Well, I think all of us feel that way in every different circle. We certainly feel the importance of being involved in Martin Popoff's books, whether it's Blue Oyster Cult, whether it's Thin Lizzy, whether it's for me, for me, it's this one. For John, of course, it's the Blue Oyster Cult book, Thin
And
Lizzy,
me and Peter
and
are both part of this book.
Yep.
and then don't forget John's part in Tim Durling's Y&T book. So, for all the readers out there, let's there you go. So you can watch us talk about it. You can read us and what our thoughts are. There's all kinds of places you can see it. So there you go. Ram it down. Let me know hit me up what you think of this. I hope that you guys have all been knocking it out of the park with great comments. So I got to thank you all for that. Again, for the professor, the Encyclopedia Britannica of rock and roll here, Peter Jones.
Peter.
Thank you. I thank you for my co-captain, John, the music nut. Thank you, my brother, John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad. This is my metal corner, my music corner of the world. Rock on forever. Because next week we're going to give you some painkiller. We will see you next week. Take care, everybody.